Hey out there, welcome back to the Executive Branch channel of my Flip Classroom. I wanted to focus a little bit now on national security policy and the role the President plays. It's probably the most important role that we know about. It's the one that we see and hear a lot about. And most of you probably recognize this picture. This is a key moment in America's fight against the war on terror, and the moment here is as the Navy SEALs were storming the compound of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, and you can see his whole national security team has gathered, military and civilian directors and advisors, as they watch the raid unfold, which eventually captured and killed Osama bin Laden. Let's take a look a little bit deeper at the President's job as the one responsible for national security. If we remember back, we've talked about how the President is also chief diplomat and has a lot to do with negotiations with other countries, signing the executive agreements that are short of treaties, signing treaties that have to be ratified by the Senate, but really also being there as a negotiator, someone who is there to negotiate peace and to lead the U.S. allies. And it's not always something that they create. They definitely inherit what the previous president has done, has chosen to do, or chosen not to do, as you can see is the case with the Afghan war. If we take a look at the role of the President in national security policy, definitely the role of the Commander-in-Chief is one of the primary roles. Again, here you see President Bush in the G.I. Joe moment, landing a fighter jet with a co-pilot on an aircraft carrier, going on to officially declare major combat operations in Iraq over and mission accomplished. Historians definitely look at that as a key moment in the presidency of George W. Bush. They make the important military decisions. They are in command of a standing military. Something, by the way, the framers were a little bit leery of, a standing army, because of the history of Great Britain and the standing army. And the presidents can deploy troops without congressional consent. No matter where the president goes, he still remains the commander-in-chief and has the ultimate authority. And one of the great examples of that is what we call the football. Everywhere the president travels, a military aide travels with him, and you can see the football being used here and carried by a military aide. That contains the nuclear arsenal codes, and the president can launch a nuclear attack or a nuclear defense of the United States from anywhere in the world, even airborne on Air Force One. So a fun little trivia fact about the president and the football. The president does have a lot of power given to him as commander-in-chief through what we call the War Powers Resolution. A lot of this comes in the midst of the Vietnam War, where Congress gives a lot of the war-making decision power away to the presidency. And the president can commit troops because of the War Powers Resolution into conflicts and be able to help out our allies or advocate our own position. The War Powers Resolution does require the president to consult with Congress when possible. Oftentimes, presidents have ignored the regulations of the War Powers Resolution, and the Supreme Court has pretty much stayed out of the fray as well. The president has a lot of power when it comes to national security policy that is relatively unchecked by the Congress. If we look at the president as a public figure in national security policy, how the president acts can help or hurt the people's view of the president as a crisis manager. Because of our current technology, the president can be anywhere, anytime, and still conduct his job as the president in national security as president. The president has always now taken a lead role in foreign affairs, much to the chagrin of a lot of congressional leaders. They still have to work with Congress, though, in terms of policy and, more important, funding. The power of the purse is a key thing. I want to look quickly at couple examples of how the president has handled things and how that has ultimately hurt the image of the president. You can see from this political cartoon the crisis we're talking about here is a crisis in Syria, and President Bashar al-Assad is crossing the red line. President Barack Obama talked about how chemical weapons, the use of chemical weapons against the Syrian people by the Syrian government, is crossing a red line, and that would require military action by the United States. And obviously you can see the red line just kind of keeps getting pushed further and further away. And we haven't had military intervention as a result. A lot of people look at this and say President Obama's foreign policy is weak. You make a promise, you keep it, which is definitely in contrast to the previous president, George W. Bush, and I think is a very fair criticism of President Barack Obama. Most recently, we can look at the president's handling of the crisis in Crimea and his lack of a relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And in a lot of ways, Vladimir Putin is has the upper hand. And Barack Obama is suffering as a result of his lack of standing and lack of clout in addressing this crisis. Now, the key question is when and where should we get involved as a U.S. government? Obviously, there are times when it's necessary and Congress declares war. Keep in mind, we haven't fought a declared war since World War II, but we've been involved in all kinds of places. A couple of examples that we can go through here that I wanted to point out. If we look here, the United States got involved in Somalia in the early 1990s, and there was a humanitarian crisis there, and we sent in troops to try and stabilize the region. In the 1990s, we also got involved in Sarajevo, in the breakup of Yugoslavia, and the ethnic cleansing that was happening there. Both of those happened under President Clinton's leadership. We also can look to, in the early 1980s, under Reagan's leadership, the United States getting involved in Panama to stop an uprising there in Panama. Much controversy with all of these interventions. But one that is probably most famous is our involvement in the liberating of Kuwait in the first Gulf War, led by President George H.W. Bush. Was not able to stop Saddam Hussein from his power in Iraq, but then, of course, his son, George W. Bush, goes over and finishes that job and overthrows Saddam Hussein post 9/11. Now, a key question that we can look at, though, is what about this global expansion of U.S. involvement? If you look at this map here, you can see where we have bases. Post-1993, especially look at those black dots. Look at where we've concentrated our efforts. Countries with a significant U.S. military presence are in dark gray. We've got a lot of places around the world where we have troops, and you can see in particular where we concentrate our efforts now. I think that's telling about our foreign policy. Now, questions I want you to consider for class that we'll discuss is what is the proper role of the United States in global security? Under what circumstances should we take action around the world? We're asked to go to a lot of places, but why do we choose where we go? What are our standards? What do you think our standards should be in terms of involvement? Is genocide enough? Is human rights violations enough? Is our economic interest being threatened enough? And finally, is it proper for the U.S. to seek and maintain its hegemonic authority? We are a global superpower. Should we stand up to any of those who challenge us and maintain that dominant position in the world? That's all for now. We'll talk about those questions in class. Take down any notes or questions you might have, and we'll go over them after we address the video.